Alright, in this video here I'm going to show how to install a track on a mini excavator. So in this case we are replacing a rubber track which wore out and broke, so you can see how that's separated there. And that's what's inside of a rubber track. It's kind of like a bunch of steel cables molded inside of some rubber. I think this track lasted about 2,000 hours. So I ordered a brand new track right there. So when ordering tracks, it's usually helpful to just use the model number of the machine. So this is a 1990 Yanmar B50-1, and you usually got to look for that dash, because there's usually a dash, like depending on what year it is. So you can look like that. Better way too, check the actual size of the tracks you're replacing. So this one here, you can see we've got 400 by 144 by 36, and then the brand right there. So the new one I ordered, alright, so on the new one I ordered, here's the size right here. So we got 400 by 144 by 36, and it's the same brand of track, so that should have no problem fitting. Alright, so let's get this thing installed. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to use the boom of the machine to pick this up off the ground. And at this time you want to inspect all your other undercarriage parts to make sure nothing else is about to fail, needs to be changed. So you look at the sprockets and make sure that's not worn down excessive. The sprocket looks fine. Then you want to look at your rollers. So what happens to these is they'll get a ton of play in them, and the whole thing will just move all up and down. Levi. So you check each roller. So they all seem fine on this. Top roller here, that's nice and tight. And the same thing with your front idler. So that's nice and tight too. Now a note on this idler. Usually when you lose your track, it's rare that it will happen on nice flat ground. It's usually on someplace crazy in the mud or something. This idler isn't attached in any way. This pulls right out of there. So if the machine's in the mud, make sure you don't lose that in the mud and you're looking for it for an hour. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is we got to take the tension, or we have to loosen this up. So what will happen is this idler here, that's what puts the tension on it by the idler coming out this direction. So what we got to do is move it in that direction. And to do that, this is our spot right here. So there's an adjustment, there's a grease fitting in here with a nut on it. So clean that out, and what you do is you loosen up the nut. That will allow the grease to come out of, there's like a hydraulic jack in here that gets pumped up with grease from a grease gun, which keeps tension on that. So that will let the tension off of it, and then that way you can push the idler in forward. Alright, so that's a big 30mm socket there. I'm going to loosen that up. I'm just going to use the other excavator to push this in, but if you don't have another machine around, sometimes you can use your bucket to push this in. It definitely moved. I don't know if it went in quite a ways. Yeah. I don't know if it can go further in that though.
I think it went in all the way.
I don't think it went in at all. I mean, it went in, but it didn't. I think it's got a lot more to go.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, that went in a long way.
Yeah, but it was out a long ways. You can kind of tell. See, the end of the thing is flush with this. On the other side, see, it's in quite a bit. So that idler should have more to go. if it was in enough. Hang on. All right, so what was happening here? This thing here was hitting dirt and it couldn't go in as far as it should be. So I cleaned that out of there. It should be fine now. Okay, yeah, I knew that had further to go. Alright. Alright, so what happened there is that pushing that in pushed all the grease out of that cylinder. Okay, so now this thing can go back in. This doesn't need to come out all the way. You can just loosen these, but I took it out. Before I put it in, see, this is the grease fitting, and that should be cleaned out first. Now we're going to lower the machine down, almost touching the ground. That's on everywhere. All right, so now it's on everywhere, all the way. It's just so loose. So now I gotta pump it up with the grease gun. And these electric grease guns, that's the only way to go. I'll put a link in the description for this because this thing is pretty awesome. So what that's doing, that's pushing that front idler out. Alright, that's as tight as the grease gun will go. But that's pretty good. Okay, so that went pretty well. So the other side here, when this track broke, it happened at the beginning of a job, and I wanted to get the job done. So I just ended up doing the entire job with one track because it was a job where I didn't need to move the machine around that much. But doing that knocked this one off, and it knocked it off enough to the point where it's off on both sides on the inside. Alright, so let's see if I can get that back on. I bet I can do it without even getting off the machine. Now to get this side, just me tracking this way with a combination of going slower with this track will probably pull it back on. Yeah, that's fine. Alright, so that job went pretty smoothly. So that's nice having that brand new track on there. I should maybe do the other side eventually soon too, because that one's getting a little rough. So I kind of feel that last track was on this side that I just changed. I think that track was almost new when I bought this machine. maybe a little over 2,000 hours, but I'm not sure. It didn't have an hour gauge in it for years, and then I kept putting hour gauges in it, and they would fill up with water and break instantly. But then I finally found one that stayed working. So that's this gauge here. So what do we got? 994. So that's good. I'll probably be looking at this video in 4 or 5 years or so to remember how many hours were on it when that track got put on there. So, but that's good. Hopefully that should last at least 2,000 hours. Alright, so the techniques I used to do this, certainly weren't the only way to get a track on. But that's, that's just kind of how I've done them before, and it worked. You can definitely use your bucket a lot to help push it around because they are heavy, especially as the machines get bigger. Machines with steel tracks, you can use those same techniques to get them on. Most machines will have that grease thing to loosen up the track unless it's something old or weird. For example, I had an old John Deere that had it was John Deere dozer, and instead of having a pump up grease thing, it had like a big threaded nut that you would tighten, and that was a terrible design. That was very hard to do, and it would always seize up. And I had this one Nortrac bulldozer that was also a threaded rod, which at least wasn't seized up, but still, that's a terrible design. So most of them are going to be greased like this. So some machines with steel tracks will, a steel track machine, you can actually separate the track, but without a pin press, it's extremely hard to do. And some of them will have a master link, where that's, the master link usually isn't terrible to deal with. So if it's a big steel track machine you're dealing with, separating the track may be the easier way to deal with it. But there's still, some pulling tools that really can help pull the track together, because, they are pretty heavy sometimes. Alright, so another thing I just wanted to mention real quick. This track on this side, obviously it's the same, but see, look, it's got twice as many links in it. And you can see the one. So it's got, 2 times as many of these as it does on the other side. And let's look for a size on here. Gee, I don't see any. Oh, here we go. 400 by 72.5 by 72. And the other side was 400, so that's the same, by 144 by 36. So that's 72.5 on the other one, and 36. I'm just kind of curious of other people's opinions on the amount of links in a track. Now, the guy selling me this, because I bought this track and put it on there maybe 3-4 years ago. And he said, oh, the more links are better. But I swear I had better luck with the track on the other side with less links, as far as it coming off less. So I kind of feel like I would go that route, especially since they're cheaper. But I'm just kind of curious what other people's opinions on that matter are. Well, alright, so we're all done here. This machine's ready to be used again, and I have plenty of jobs lined up for it.